Mm.
I think that's the first tranche of people we've got. Let's just pop that into a gallery view. Hello, and welcome to Somerset Chambers of Commerce First Thursday Club, and notably on the 1st of April. So I so far haven't seen anything that is too untoward, and now we've passed midday. I gather that it's no longer the appropriate way. So hopefully we won't get any tricks on our presentation and delivery this morning. A couple of three things, if I may, in terms of general housekeeping and how we operate. I'm delighted to welcome today Patrick Traynor, Deborah Lawrence and Karen Duffett from Highways England project team, who are going to talk to us about the A358 and an overview of what's happening within our county on highways, which is really interesting, because you'll know that we as a chamber are particularly keen to understand critical infrastructure projects. We've got Hinkley going on, we've got This is Gravity, etc. So the A358 update will be well received. I'm going to run through just a bit of housekeeping, if I may, and I'm going to hand across to Patrick. If I could ask you to right-click on and just put your name and your company there, or certainly your full name. Just to remind you, we record these so that we can put them back up onto the Somerset Chambers of Commerce First Thursday part on the events page, so you can see that. If you want to share information, if you could put your email address or contact details in the chat, and colleagues can then contact you after this meeting. If you have any questions, could I ask that once the team from the Highways England project team is finished, we could run through the Q&As. And what I'll do, if I may, is just run round the screen I have in front of me to ask you just to do a brief introduction and your link to the construction industry. So I'm going to start, because I'm allowed to, because I'm running the meeting. So my name is Stephen Hennigoff. I'm the CEO of Somerset Chambers of Commerce, and my link to the construction industry is twofold. I spent 5 years working for a little building company called Balfour Beatty, so I have a rough idea of what goes on in construction. And then obviously at this stage as well, as CEO of Chambers of Commerce, we're working as the supply chain partner for the incredibly important HPC Hinkley Point C build on the nuclear power station. That's me. If I could go to John at Wilkins Safety and ask you to introduce yourself, John.
Oh, good morning. Thank you, Stephen. Yes, my name's John Sedge. I work for Wilkins Safety Group. We are a health and safety consultancy, so we're very much aligned to the construction industry, supporting projects as CDM, principal designer, project manager, but also supporting other businesses, as we have been doing over the last couple of years now with COVID very much upon us, carrying out risk assessments, COVID assurance assessments, and a wealth of other projects. So yes, health and safety, very much aligned to the construction side of things, Stephen.
Thank you, John. Good morning to you, or midday. Dave Holmes. David, how are you?
Press that unmute button. I'm fine, thank you. Yes.
Good.
So I'm David Holmes, Commercial Director at Southwest Aerial Surveys. We're a B2B company, really, and we provide technical support for construction through geospatial mapping using drones. So precise and accurate maps that can be exported into CAD and BIM.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Hello, Sophie. How are you?
Hello, I'm Sophie. I work for Malhurst and Saunders construction company over in Glastonbury. Used to work at Yeovil College. It's nice to see you, Vida. Yeah, we do projects from sort of a couple of thousand all the way up to sort of 5 million. Do an awful lot in the construction, in the education industry, and also healthcare. So just here really to connect with people and see what else everyone else is doing.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sophie. Hi, Colin. How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's Colin Whitworth. I work for JSP Limited. We are manufacturers of above-the-neck PPE, height safety and traffic management products. I'm the account manager working in the Southwest, and I live in Taunton.
Brilliant. Thanks, Colin. Karen, Good morning. Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm Karen Duffett. I'm the stakeholder manager for Highways England in the Southwest.
Thank you, Karen. Dida, hi.
Hi, I'm Vida Crichton. I work at Yeovil College. Hello, Sophie. I'm account manager stroke business development manager for Yeovil College and manage all the college's top line accounts. And as well as everybody else, just here to find out what's going on, sharing good practice and bad practice.
Let's hope there's none of that. Thank you. Hi, Mike.
Hi, good morning all. I'm Mike Morgan. I'm MD at MMS 2012 Limited. We're electrical installation contractors and engineers based in Bridgewater. We've been trading under guises from Mike Morgan Electrical Services and various other things over the years since about 1989, working throughout the Southwest and throughout the country at times, but very much involved in the HPC project at the moment.
Brilliant.
Involved in other sort of large things such as gravity project and that coming forward. So really looking to maintain our contacts in this area with local business and offer our services where we can.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mike. I'll go across to Curtis. Hi, Curtis.
It's that mute button again, isn't it?
It is the devil, that one.
Yes, hello everyone. My name's Curtis Bartlett from Bartlett Bid Management. My company is only about 2.5 months old at this stage. I specialise in MEICA, which is mechanical, electrical, instrumentation, control automation, engineering, and construction. So I'm a bid writer working for those kinds of companies, and of course have a very strong interest in the construction and engineering business.
Brilliant. Thank you, Curtis. I'm going to work on the assumption of process of elimination. So I think iPad is Karen. No, iPad is Deborah.
Hello there. Sorry, everybody.
Hello. Hi, Deborah. Hi. Welcome.
I'm so
welcome.
used to using other machines than this one, so I've had to come in via my iPad. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Deborah Lawrence. I work for Highways England in the road investment programme side, and I look after the engagement and communications on the 358 programme.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. And I've got Rebecca. Hi. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Konevsky. I work for Wincanton and we're heavily involved in the HPC project as their logistics partner. So nice to meet you all.
Brilliant, thank you. And finally, hello Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie Beecham. I'm the project lead for the HPC supply chain.
Brilliant, thank you Natalie. I'm delighted to hand across to Patrick Traynor and Deborah Lawrence and Karen Duffett. And Patrick's going to run through a presentation. Patrick is from the Highways England project team. All yours, Patrick. Thank you.
Hi, Stephen. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for inviting us to present today. So yeah, as mentioned, we're just going to run through a few slides to basically give you an update on where things are with the A358 scheme at the moment, what our plans are going forward as well. So if you can just go on to the next slide, please, Laura. And then, yeah, if you skip one more. And sorry, I'll one more, I guess, because we've done the welcome introductions. Great. Karen is just going to quickly talk through kind of our work in a wider region in the Southwest, and then we'll go into kind of some slides on the A358 itself.
So briefly, on screen, you can see a little sort of tube style map of the Southwest, and that pretty much covers the roads that Highways England looks after. So that's the strategic road network. What you'll notice on there is that the A358 doesn't feature, and that's because the A358 at the moment is a local authority highways road rather than ours, but the scheme that we're developing is part of the A303 A358 corridor. So at the point when it's built, it would get adopted into the strategic road network. But in essence, in the Southwest, we've got 620 miles of motorway and strategic A roads, and they provide the access to key economic sites, you know, the big cities and the ports and the airports, and we help unlock brownfield sites. And at the moment, we've got 5 major projects that are going through development. So they're listed on screen. We've got the A30 Tiverton to Carlin Cross, which is just about to start building down in Cornwall. The A303 Spartford to Ilchester, which is something obviously on the A303 quite close to where you guys are. That got its development consent order at the end of January, so that should start building later this year. The A358, which is obviously the scheme we're here to talk about, the A303 Stonehenge, which got its development consent order last November, I think, and then the A417 Missing Link. So they're the projects in development. And then in addition to that, we've got what's called the RIS3 pipeline, which are the schemes that we're looking at, having been directed to do so by the government, for them to then make a decision about as to whether they go into funding for RIS3, RIS being the road investment strategy that's set out by the government. And at the moment, there's 2 live projects in that. One is the Severn Resilience Package down in, around Bristol, and looking at the impact of removing the tolls off of the Severn bridges. And one is down in Cornwall, looking at a section of road near Plymouth on the A38. There are other schemes in the RIS3 pipeline, and one of the key ones is the A303 Phase 2 upgrade. It's just not live at the moment, so it will come on stream at some point during the next 5 years. The RIS, we call it the RIS, the Road Investment Strategy. They run in 5-year chunks. So the first one was 2015 to 2020, and now we're in RIS 2, which is 2020 to 2025. RIS 3 goes beyond that in the next 5-year chunk. So I think that pretty much sums it up. Next slide.
Thanks, Karen. I'm taking you through this part of the section really to talk more specifically about the 358 itself. It's been a while since we've actually come out to speak to people about the project, because a number of things have happened since the preferred route announcement, which was announced in 2019. We have gone through a change within Highways England, where we've started to look at delivery integration partnerships, which means that regionally we allocate our projects to sort of specific suppliers who, from their point of view, they then bring on board other suppliers to help to deliver the scheme. So since we came out with a preferred route announcement for the route for the Taunton to Southfield scheme, we've looked at bringing in a supply chain network to be able to help us to deliver the project. Added to that, the project moved status, so it moved away from being what was classed as a normal project for Highways England to deliver under the Road Investment Programme to a project that's classed as nationally significant and also sits within what's classed as Tier 1 projects, which means we have to go through a lot of governance to move to various stages in the project in relation to the Department for Transport and the need to seek approvals from Number 10 and the Treasury as well. The scheme is moving forward. We plan to come out to a formal public consultation later in this year. And at the moment, the team, which are known as Taylor Woodrow Plus, which are the DIP, as we call them, are starting to pull together the next stage of the design development. So at the moment, following the preferred route announcement in 2019, the new team have now taken on the route and are starting to develop a lot of the junctions and the roads, etc., along that way. We've started a lot of engagement at the moment. We had a community forum last week and a business forum with businesses, but we want to continue these kinds of meetings and work forward with everybody to discuss how the scheme progresses. This scheme is vitally important to the area, and having spoken to a number of people already, it's key that one of the objectives to the scheme is to provide opportunity and growth in the region. At the moment, the A358 is single carriageway, and a lot of local roads lead on to that junction, with the complexity of the M5 junction 25 at Taunton and also the Southfields junction at the A303. So there's a lot of work to be done. The scheme is about, I'm going to say in kilometres, about 13 kilometres long, but the plan would be to do some online work and some offline work to build a scheme that is eventually is dual carriageway. So at the moment, the team are looking at further design. We plan to look at public consultation later in the year. That will result in a further design fix for the scheme, with then a plan to put in what's classed as a development consent order application. Again, because this is the project that it sits within the region of the planning inspectorate, and we would need to apply for a development consent order. Then there's quite a lengthy period of about 18 months while that whole examination goes on, and the public has an opportunity to have their say through rounds of discussions with the planning inspectorate. Ultimately, we then look to being granted the development consent order, and construction would start in and around 2024 with some online work and some offline work as part of the scheme. Can I have the next slide, please, Laura? So just to summarise, this is really what the preferred route announcement looks like. We understand that there's the Nexus 25 site at the top end at M5 Junction 25. So there's some improvement works that's actually already started on Junction 25 of the M5. And then the plan would be that our scheme would link into that new work around about the Nexus site. We would then look to doing various junction improvements, some of which we've got to look towards the local communities to understand how we can improve their journey experience. Because at the moment, because it's single carriageway, a lot of the smaller routes, say for example at Ash and further down at Hatch Beecham, they all sort of lead on to the scheme. So there'll be a need for us to look at alternative routes for some of those people that want to take that journey, because we will be building junctions as part of the scheme, but it obviously being a dual carriageway with speed, we would need to look at removing some of the safety aspects of local traffic joining that route. You can see on this particular drawing that at the top, you can see where the existing A358 currently sits nearer to Henlade. And then you look at that junction where it moves in at Ash, and that's when we would be moving from the sort of offline development of the scheme to back onto the online development of the scheme. It was in various phases. It being so long, there's a different feel for the scheme at the top end towards Taunton, and then there's obviously the Southfields junction, which leads on to the roundabout of the A303, and we are looking to make improvements on that as well. This is very much the design of the scheme at preferred route announcement. At the moment, as I say, the team are working on looking to develop that design. So when we come out later in the year with the public consultation, there'll be a lot more detail showing the overbridges, the kind of the structures, etc., that we plan to be looking at as part of the preliminary design for the scheme. Next slide, please. So this really just lays out some of the things that I mentioned previously about the objectives of the scheme. One is obviously to improve the capacity of the road and support economic growth. And at the moment, there is a need obviously for improving the safety aspects of the road. There's a lot of congestion that they experience, particularly at the Southfields end. And the improvement of both of those junctions, plus the dualling of the route, we see as the way forward to improve this. Having had some discussions with business owners last week as well, we strongly believe that the improvement of this route supports the A303 junction and obviously the M5 journey as well. So the conversations that have been had so far is, you know, please can you get on and do this scheme, because I think the capacity of the road at the moment, I know all bearing in mind with COVID, but as soon as we're all opened up again, there'll be a need to really look at what impact that route has on the existing movement of traffic. We've had a lot of feedback that it is part of the corridor, vital to the corridor, and it is also vital to the peninsula as well as you move further out to the southwest. Next slide, please. Oh, questions?
First of all, thank you very much indeed. I'm delighted you were able to join us today. If I may, I'll just touch on how important it is. We meet with Somerset County Council. It's our first meeting of the year, of the new year, in January, and we always have a high degree of participation. Head of Somerset County Council Highways always joins us, and it's really good that we're brought up to speed with what's happening, what's going on across the county, etc. And the Nexus Business Park, Nexus 25, was featured quite considerably because of the work that they're doing via their contractor Griffiths, who are also working up at the Gravity. This is Gravity site. But what was really good, and I felt for the team, is that when they deliver ahead of project and ahead of time, nobody writes in. Nobody says, brilliant, that was all done. And head of highway says, the only time we hear from people is when we might go a week behind, and all of a sudden there's people coming in, and you're almost the unsung hero in terms of providing that. And the reason I mentioned that particular area was that the head of highways had said that they had made that decision to carry out the work at Junction 25, the Nexus 25 Business Park. And somebody piped up with, well, the A358 hasn't finally been. And he said, well, if we don't do it and it goes ahead, we're then criticised because we haven't got our end ready. And if we do it now and get it ready, and as has happened, which is great news, the A358 programme is going in place, nobody goes, good thinking, good joined up work. So I felt for head of highways. I'm just going to ask one question. How easy is it when you transition across from being a local authority road, because you're saying that obviously it's going to become part of highways portfolio. Is that reasonably easy? Does somebody sign a bit of paper in my naivety, or is it quite a complex process? You're laughing.
Yeah. It's a really good question, Stephen, because there's a number of, I mean, one of the things I will say, and it is around the whole development consent order process, which for those of us that come from the Highways England side have done a number of these schemes now. They are classed as quite complex, but as part of the process that we go through is about the relationships we hold with the county council and also the district councils as well. So Patrick can support the fact that we've already had a number of meetings with all of the local authorities to work through how we will work jointly on the project moving forward. And that's been really successful. We've seen it work elsewhere. So already we're in the state of looking at how we can agree terms through what's called joint council working. And that will involve, and again, it is the complexity of the area. We were quite surprised that there's over 24 parishes. There's unparished areas in the area. There are 3 local authorities that it affects, one being the Highway Authority, and then 2 local authorities with Somerset West and Taunton Deane, and then South Somerset as well.
Yeah, yeah.
The Highways Authority has some authority, the local authority has other authority. So particularly at the moment when we're trying to do things like survey work, Patrick's got the headache of having to sort of look at, well, is it the highways that should be dealing with this? Is it the environment that should be dealing with this? Is it local authority, or is it Highways Authority? So we're going through that kind of storming phase at the moment. Also, what we have to do, and again, because of the planning inspectorate guidelines, but works really well, is we work through a process called a statement of common ground. So that is regular meetings with the authorities to agree, or to agree to disagree, or to agree in principle that we agree with some things, and that some things need to be moved on and agreed over time. And the reason that's been brought in by the planning inspectorate is so that there is this firm record of position at the time you go into a development consent order application. And the rigour around the planning inspectorate rules is really good, because you know that you arrive at that point of an application that everything has been looked at and everything has been unravelled. Leading to your question, over time, that will be on our agenda. So the regular conversations that we have over the next 6 months or so, even beyond that, will agree in principle. The Highways Authority already knows that it is going to be transferred over to Highways England. But then again, there will also be a need in some instances to look at the maintenance of that over the longer term, which may well fall to some of the Highways authorities within the local area. But the beauty of the way that we work is that we have those conversations now, so they're already progressing around the development of the scheme. So we're working very closely with the Highways Authority about what the scheme will look like. They have a sort of an applicant approach towards it as well. So although we're not applying to the county council, for example, for this application, we're applying to the planning inspectorate. They are an authority in their own right because it's within their county. So those discussions are already underway. There'll be a lot, I think, for us on this particular scheme. I think our biggest challenge will be the impact it may have on local businesses during the time that we're doing the work, which again, the county council is keen to understand how that will work. And then local residents as well, who will have changes in their worlds, because at the moment they have single lane carriageway that they can go on and off of, be it dangerously, that at the point when we build a highway, which is dual carriageway, they won't necessarily be able to access that road directly from the point that they're used to doing at this moment in time. So again, the work with the authorities is to determine the impact that may have and agree with the authorities how we're going to deal with that together. So the biggest thing for us is about how we work in partnership with the authorities. So I'm hoping to answer the very final bit of your question that it's just a signing on a bit of paper by the time we've gone through this whole process that we need to go through at this moment in time.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to go to the floor. David, you have a question.
Yeah, I'm just interested, I mean, in the supplier pathway for how you procure services from outside contractors, particularly, you know, high quality local ones like the group that's sat around here at the moment. What's the process that we need to be involved in?
Yeah, Highways England struggled over time to have lots of suppliers that they were dealing with. So the idea of using the delivery integration partnership approach in a region was the mechanism by which we call them, again, it's another euphemism, tier one again, but a different form of tier one. They become basically the tier one supplier. So what I would recommend over time through this forum, we can ask our tier one supplier to come on board and be part of these conversations moving forward. But that would be the route that I would see local businesses engaging, would really actually be with the DIP.
I think as well, it's worth adding to that where we've got schemes in construction, for instance, the A30 down in Cornwall, there is a push to use local supply chains and to support that. And what might be of the most interest to you now is there's a free resource, free at the point of use, called the Supply Chain Sustainability School, that we and other big organisations help fund. So it's free if you want to be in the supply chain, and it's about engaging the supply chain and assessing the supply chain's knowledge and developing the knowledge in core areas. So I was on a session about it the other day. There's 3,000 online resources, video-based workshops, stuff that you can learn, and there's a whole pathway of learning to go through to enable a supplier to be at the point where they could tender for work as part of the supply chain. So it's worth investigating that now. There's a brilliant website that explains it all. And the best thing is, for the small and medium-sized enterprise, there's no charge for getting this knowledge, but it's helping you be in a position to benefit directly from the scheme when it comes to your area.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to reinforce, David, what Karen said there from the point of view about local suppliers, local workmanship. I mean, even down to crafts. On some of the schemes, dependent on the nature of them, we try to retain local heritage as well. So as Karen mentioned earlier, we had a scheme there on the 417. The 417's in an AOMB and has a lot of dry stone walling. So there'll be a local requirement there to ensure that when we build the scheme, that sympathetically we look at what goes on around. But as Karen mentioned, at this moment in time, the best thing to do is to get onto that website, because again, what happens is these schemes are long. You know, as it said on the first slide, it's 2024 before we actually look towards construction. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a need for supply chain support, even as early as the next stages of the design. At the moment, the team are really focused on looking at how we can get to a public consultation so that we can consult around what the scheme design looks like. But we've got environmental teams on the ground at the moment. We've got land agents on the ground at the moment. So there is always opportunity there providing we sort of go through the right vehicle to do that. But we can definitely bring on board the supply chain partners as part of these calls moving forward, so that you can have those direct conversations with them. But as Karen said, getting up to speed on how to become involved within the construction side of Highways England, if that site would actually really help with those early sort of developments.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say how pleased I am to hear that? My colleague Natalie, who is the project lead for Hinckley, will probably be smiling. We've nothing against scaffold companies from Liverpool, but equally we've got some very good scaffold companies in Bridgewater and Taunton who can quite amply and adequately put scaffold up. So we're very keen to encourage local engagement. We recognise it needs to be through a fair and open and transparent system. No problem with that whatsoever. But it's great news to hear that you have the facility to do that, because I think my knowledge and understanding of the Hinckley is that they have a tier one system. and Natalie and her team cascade the work down to local supply chain. And to me, that's really, really important.
I think the key thing is as well, it's not limited to just the construction industry. You know, the site officers will need a cleaner, they will need food supply, they will need other stuff. And so there is a lasting benefit. And I think possibly one of the things that it would be helpful to get feedback on, not necessarily right now, but as we develop this relationship, is about who within the local, within Somerset, which businesses stand to benefit, both from an improved road network and from possibly bidding for work as part of this, because to help us tell the story and to help us convince some people who might be sitting on the fence and I'm not sure if I like the idea of a new road scheme, it's helpful to know where the job creation is going to come from, or which, you know, is there an artisan cheese producer in Somerset who's suddenly going to benefit from a better road link down to wherever, or is it a logistics company who can see that their patterns of travel are going to be eased by having less congestion around Henley. Whatever that story might be, it's helpful for us to know it and just build it in as part of the case study work.
And I'm more and more we discuss, and happier and more delighted I am. You mentioned cheese. We, as a Chambers of Commerce, work very closely with the Cornwall Chambers of Commerce, Dorset and Devon and Plymouth, and obviously further up Business West. We're part of the British Chambers of Commerce South West. I was at a meeting with a lady that runs a company called Clive's Pies, who have stormed into places like the multiples of Waitrose, Sainsbury's, etc. And one of their struggles was distribution across the southwest in terms of road infrastructure. And my colleagues down in the now recovering fish industry that bring fresh sea fish and food up from Cornwall across and use the 358, the M5 and the 303 as a major arterial route will be very pleased to tell you how important it is to the region and to businesses. So I think we can develop this relationship and give you some information about who and what and why that benefits, or what's clear is, as we've operated with the highways and also with Somerset County Council, is clear and open dialogue and just facts. It is really useful. You know, we have that, I keep going back to that meeting, the first one of the year in the January, and they tell us what's happening and what's going on. And there was a question, if I remember rightly, about, why don't you put two teams on so they work through the night? And actually, it was very well explained that the productivity wouldn't increase double, that you then need the additional on-off of teams, 3 days on, 5 days off. The cost would be incredible. And actually, the answer was very simple. And the person who'd actually asked the question was, I understand that. No, I wouldn't put two teams on working through the night either. Because only, you know, the people on the industrial site see just what's happening on the motorway, they immediately go, well, there's nobody there, let's have two teams. But they don't think about the impact, the cost. My point to this is that the open and transparency from the highways and from the county council explained very clearly why. So I'm really keen to develop these relationships and provide and listen to what's happening, and also put some businesses in front of you that can tell you how important it is to them and what the impact will be, if that helps.
It's also worth pointing out as well. I mean, I think the world has changed now around the idea about carbon neutrals and, you know, travelling sort of long distances and the impact that has. That a lot of schemes now look towards how they can encourage even the local use of materials. So it goes beyond it just being kind of, you know, an idea. Again, other schemes that I've worked on are very much into how you can reuse what we use, or actually just use local networks rather than travelling the country, as you say, to Liverpool to get scaffolders. It's about how we nuclear some of that into a region.
Excellent. I'm very mindful I've been asking, are there any further questions from the floor in terms of our colleagues from, John?
Yeah, obviously within the chamber, Stephen, there's many of us even on this webinar today that have got skill sets that can be brought to bear for such projects as we are talking about today. It's not every day that you see a major road network coming through Somerset. So it'd be great if we can show the various skill sets that we have to bring those to bear for this project, but in a fair way, because it's very difficult to evidence your skills if you've never worked on a particular project of this kind or nature that will impact on the area. But nevertheless, there are the skills on the screen today from all the various members that can offer something. Curtis, I'm sure, will be well experienced in in the bid process and how we can how our contributions can be scored fairly and accurately, so that we can be engaged in the project on a local basis.
Yeah, and from a county chamber perspective, we actively encourage that. I think we'll speak with Patrick and Karen and Deborah after this and exchange emails and look at how we progress this. I'm very mindful. I'm thinking of the Hinckley supply chain. The team that work there, headed by Natalie and Alan, etc. That they try and actively engage at local level, and they make the opportunity aware. Now whether somebody wants to take that opportunity and follow through, but if there are packages of work the tier ones have to offer, then the supply, and I'm looking in the corner, and I'm sure she's going to nod at me if I get it wrong, but the supply chain are there to make that knowledgeable, make that available. Whether people choose to take that or whether they are selected are two different things, but it's about being aware of the opportunity. Is that the best way to describe it, Natalie?
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Thank you. Are there any further questions on A358? Okay, can I open up and just ask a question on, and it may not be the area, but the A303, we're very keen to see that develop and ultimately the I think 8 projects come through. You've mentioned the end down by Haynes Motor Museum, which is brilliant, and Stonehenge. Whilst I understand you don't have a crystal ball, how sort of are we going to be on the rest of 303, or is that a bit of how long's a piece of string?
So the way it works, in case people don't know, so we get the road investment strategy, which is the government's document, and they tell us what they want us to do, and our response to that is our delivery plan. And as I alluded to at the beginning, the road investment strategy works in 5-year chunks. So at the beginning of RIS1, so if we go all the way back to 2015, when Highways England had just been formed from what was the Highways Agency, we had RIS1, and as part of that, there was all this work done around the A303, A358 corridor, and there was a document produced at the time which looked at the road and basically identified there's 8 sections that could do with some improvement, and 3 of those were taken forward in what we call RIS1, the Road Investment Strategy Period 1. And that was Stonehenge, Sparkford scheme, and the A358. So they all went through the development. So they're at an advanced stage now. We're now in RIS2, that began at the March 2020. And so those 3 schemes are still progressing and getting through the development consent order planning process, and then we'll go on to construction if they get all the necessary consents. And in RIS2, there wasn't anything additional for the A303, A358 corridor, with the exception of, I mentioned it as part of the RIS3 pipeline. So that's looking at, so the RIS3 pipeline is broader than just that corridor. There's 32 schemes nationally that are being developed, and they're being looked at in the very early stages. They're not committed for funding yet. So we're looking at, as I said on the slide earlier, around the 7 bridges and the 7 resilience, what's happening with the tolls. One down in Cornwall, there's loads around the country. And as part of the RIS3 pipeline, the A303 phase 2 will be developed. And I think that's coming on stream towards the end of this year. So that's the early part of that engagement, just to work out which of those remaining schemes, we've taken the first 3, that leaves 5 left, which of those need to be done, which in what order. And so then we collate all that information and we give it back to the Department for Transport, and they do what they need to do with it, and the ministers make the decision. So it has to go back. We'll do some work, it will go back to them. They'll then decide what is in the RIS for RIS3, and that's when we'll know. So we don't know for definite which schemes across the phase 2 of the A303 will be in the RIS. We have to wait until they tell us, but we'll do that early work. It's a very early stage at the moment, but I believe is going to be kind of coming on stream towards the end of this year. Don't quote me on that.
No, that's fine. Look, this is really useful, and really helpful. Thank you to you and your team. I was fortunate enough to meet with Chris Grayling in February of 2019. He presented when he came down with his team and talked about investment in the infrastructure, the Dawlish seawall, which is really critical to my colleagues further down the southwest as a main arterial route in terms of railway, and also some of the other schemes that they were doing. So we'll keep an ear out. There's no bias at all, but obviously if you could sway it that the southwest projects get done before anybody else's, we'd be very grateful. No, I don't have any hidden agenda there at all. Brilliant, thank you. Are there any further questions for the team? In which case, can I say thank you to Patrick, to Karen and Deborah. I've got a couple of bits I'd like to talk about on the QES. Can we get the website link from you and put that through?
So that's for the sustainability school?
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll grab that as an email and we'll put that onto our site for those on the call now. We'll make sure that you can get that, John, and you have access to there it is, brilliant.
Yeah. Also, actually, on the Highways England website as well, when Karen mentioned, I know it's a bit of hunting around it, but actually there is a Southwest page that you can actually see the schemes and what kind of stage that they're at, whether they're looking to go into construction, whether they're in the preliminary design. So most of the schemes that we've spoken about today broadly, there are web pages on our website that talk about the various stages that they're in and what the next process is. So they're worth reading to understand, because there is a lot going on at the moment, and I think and each scheme has its own merits. Some that are just widenings of junctions and other things like that, which would be our sort of business as usual. And then we've got these big major road corridor schemes that we sort of talked to you about today.
Brilliant. Well, we'd certainly like to invite you back. Both I wear two hats, both from the perspective of Somerset Chambers of Commerce and our construction colleagues and my general business members across the county, but also in a wider perspective for the British Chambers of Commerce Southwest, because I know my colleagues in the counties of Devon and Cornwall are equally keen to understand the infrastructure and transport routes up and down the peninsula to get goods in and goods out, and indeed services in and out. So we'd very much like to continue this. You're very welcome to stay on. I'm just going to touch on with the panel some findings from the quarterly economic survey of Q4, specifically in construction, which is I just wanted to bring up to speed. The construction sector output rose in the back end of Q4, believe it or not. The dominant service sector contracted, so services were down as a whole, while industry was down by 8.6, and input also fell sharply. So I'm just going to ask the group that I'm talking to in terms of how is it for you at the moment? Does that bear out? Because I know also Q1, and you may have seen that we got some coverage on Brexit yesterday and at the beginning of the week, is looking pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, perhaps I'll come in there, Stephen.
Yeah, please do, Curtis.
Sorry, Mike. I was just going to add something to that, is that most of the clients I've been working for are to do with the water industry, which works on a different kind of cycle. They have a 5-year asset management plan system. And I know it's been greatly affected by, I think, a combined sort of double trouble effect of obviously Brexit and COVID. And we're actually just into the second year, the start of the second year of the current 5-year program. And I know a lot of the major projects and things that we're going to go ahead just simply haven't started yet. So it's affected a lot of the SME type MICA civils contractors throughout the region to a great degree. And I know a lot of staff have been on furlough, etc. Hopefully, of course, that will all start gaining some momentum shortly. But that's kind of my perspective on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Thanks, Curtis. Mike, you wanted to just touch on.
Yeah, I think Q4 for us has been sort of the learning of the year with the COVID thing. It's been we've had a few people in on furlough and that, but actually we've learned to deal with that element, and I think our clients are coming through that as well. Opportunities are coming forward, so we've got plenty of opportunity being offered it's about perhaps clients turning that around into reality. But not only at HPC, but generally, I think in the region we've got a lot of inquiries. So we're pleased and looking forward to a year where we hopefully increase our output.
Cool, thank you. Sophie, I just want to ask in terms of your thought process in the tail end of 2020, which has been rather interesting, and obviously now as we come into April, the first quarter of 2021.
I mean, last year I started working for Mount Hewish and Saunders in August last year, so it was a few months into everything happening with COVID. We was quiet. A lot of people I was speaking to, you know, prospective clients and clients were keeping stuff on the back burner to see what happened. And like was mentioned before, it was that double whammy of waiting for Brexit and being unsure of COVID. What we found in the last, I'd say 8 weeks, is everybody's just gone, right, let's get tenders out, let's get things done. So everyone that held back have now sort of had a realisation that this is the way things are going to be now, or for a while. So everyone's getting loads of tenders out there, lots of pricing going on at the moment, lots of tenders out, lots of, as usual this time of year, lots of educational stuff. But I think this year will be a good year for the construction industry.
Okay.
Because I think, like we've done before in this country in hard times, is we have a building boom, and we invest in education, we invest in healthcare, and we invest in homes. So I think now that first year of COVID is done, and we know how to work around it, and we're all starting to open up again, I think it'll be a good year for us.
Oh, that's really encouraging. I guess the other question that I'm keen to understand, thank you, Sophie, is that we had some pretty stark numbers from the ONS and also from our QES, the Quarterly Economic Survey, run by British Chambers of Commerce, about Brexit, the first 3 months of Brexit. You know, and I was lucky enough to represent the Chamber, and we did a piece on Points West and BBC Radio Somerset. My colleagues down further down were on Spotlight and BBC Devon. The reason being is nearly half, or 47% of the 500 businesses that were surveyed had been telling us that Brexit had a negative impact on their business, and particularly on businesses that needed to bring product in from Europe and then resell either in the United Kingdom or back out across to the mainland European Union. They've been hit with additional VAT, slow logistics and transportation challenges, incorrect information on EORI numbers, etc. Whilst I don't think, and I'm looking at Colin in terms of your export model from Minster level, any of you currently directly export, but have you started to have any impact through your supply chain, or are you seeing any positives? Because there were some companies, albeit there was a yurt company that was doing really well, but the majority of the ones that we spoke to, Simply Different and a classic motorcycle business, were both really struggling with additional costs that were making their product uneconomical.
Yeah, well, I sit as a South West England sort of person, so in Wales, so very much my focus is here. It did cause us all sorts of trouble on January the 1st, absolutely, where we stopped exporting products for a couple of weeks and we got our heads around it. We're in a lucky position where we have a German manufacturing location and a German warehousing location, which we set up 2 or 3 years ago, to give us a footprint in mainland Europe, and that has been our saviour, because we now transfer products either from the Far East straight now or from the UK into there, or manufacturing in Germany itself, and then supply to mainland Europe from that site. We as a company now, if we take, as UK sales, if we take orders from customers who've got clients overseas, we now don't supply into Europe at all from the UK base. We either supply to them and they deal with the export side of things, or we divert it to our export teams. So for us, that project, Ireland's a slight difficulty. My colleague who works in Ireland covers Northern and Southern Ireland, and I know he's had a tricky few months organising all of that. The bigger issue for us, I mean, obviously we've got a UK manufacturing base, and a lot of stuff we do make is in the UK. It's the ports. It's the ports and the issues of getting product into the UK, and where you go from feast to famine, where we were struggling to get products through. Now that 6 months orders ago is now coming through, so you get a glut of products coming through. So that adds challenges to it as well.
Colin, thank you. I don't want to quote you, but I have been around the manufacturing site and seen the operations at Minster level when they were there. So are you saying that's been either reduced down or isn't operating at capacity now?
Quite the opposite. Minster level is still up. So we make helmets in Minster level and the hearing products in Minster level. That's still that beautiful 3-year-old woolen mill, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I recall it. Yeah.
We've got a respiratory hub in Carterton, just at the back of RAF Bryce Norton. So we're UK manufacturing disposable respiratory. We have repatriated manufacturing of reusable filters and half masks and full face masks in the UK as well. So very much, there's in certain industry, there's a feel that we've been too reliant on overseas manufacturing, and there's an agenda of bringing stuff back to the UK, which I'm sure you'll be interested in. There seems to be that feeling out there that we're hearing quite a bit.
Yeah, it really is a mixed bag. I know that when we spoke to Alfred Van Pelt from his business Something Different in Bridgewater, he'd reduced his workforce at peak at Christmas at 70 down to 11, and that was a direct response to the fact that the challenges and difficulties of bringing product in, because he brings it into the UK, relabels, repackages, and then sends it out from the UK, and he was getting hit double time, and particularly when it was arriving on mainland Europe, his customers were being notified that the product you've purchased has been shipped. You now need to collect or arrange for delivery. By the way, you now need to pay VAT on top, which starts to make it pretty uncomfortable, given that unless you're in the luxury goods item and you don't need to look at that ticket price, pricing is part of the competitive place of making your product available. So I was just interested to hear. From my point of view, that's good news about Minster level, but equally, I think the frustration that the ports are logging things up. Has anybody else picked up on anything within their supply chain in terms of specifically within construction, or is it starting to ease?
No.
Yeah,
no.
we have. Sorry.
Go on.
I do. John, Sophie, if I may.
Okay. Yeah, no, very, very quickly. We had a commercial project that we were involved in very early on that had been given the go-ahead, so the budget had been set aside, and we started assisting the clients, sort of gathering everything together, putting out the bit, and then suddenly the funds were pulled. And it was that nervousness around the COVID scenario, and the whole project was put on hold, and so we're looking to revisit that particular project again later in the year. So there's been a few of those instances, and we've just had to be, and I think that's what the UK is really good at, is innovation, working our way around things. And so adapting our product or services to other areas where we can still get revenue coming in. So, switching to online training as opposed to face-to-face and all the rest of it. But the other thing I was quickly curious about, I love the upbeat statement that Sophie made, about construction, particularly in the area. But obviously, there's still that sort of ongoing concern with the phosphate levels with, the bigger builders. Is that still an issue, Sophie? That's something I wanted to ask.
We've got one person that we priced a project for, and they was meant to have their planning permission through back before Christmas, and they still haven't got planning because they're waiting on this issue to be resolved. So like you say, with COVID, we've got clients that have had their funding pulled, or they're worried, or they're hanging on, and then you've got this situation where you're nearly 4 months down the line, and they should have had planning 4 months ago. So you've got these clients here that they just can't move forward. So that's something that's a home dealt problem that we have that isn't being resolved, and that's holding up small businesses and from being able to do what they need to do, which it really kind of is something that needs to be resolved.
I know David Hall alluded to it in our meeting with him about the planning restrictions directly due to the phosphate. I want to call it a bit like it's not a project, but it's a troublesome area, I think would be the best way to describe the phosphate gate is what I'm looking for, that there doesn't seem to be any movement, and there's a lot of people going head scratching, which is always very frustrating, particularly if you've got a push or want planning put through. Thank you to everybody. I'm aware we're slightly smaller in numbers. We normally, particularly on half term, have a number, but it's made up in terms of quality rather than quantity. So unless there are any other questions, can I say to you all, thank you very much for joining us on the April First Thursday Construction Club from Somerset Chambers of Commerce. And if I may, I'll be the first to wish you a very happy Easter. I'm not sure what we will be doing over Good Friday, Easter Sunday and Bank Holiday Monday, because I think we're still fairly restricted, but I'm sure we'll find something to do. And I look forward to seeing you all when we can meet in person at Junction, the 37 Club, at some point in the near future. I think we're planning, all being well, to look at the first one in September. I'm looking at Laura in September, so I will be happily to stand you a corned beef sandwich and a cup of tea.
Sounds good.
Have a good Easter. Thank you, everybody. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.